it was not prepared. I mean, it was not planned. I was not prepared for it. So I went through my pregnancy and I had him, and 3 months later, I got pregnant with my youngest, and I was furious because there was just no way that I should have gotten pregnant. And it was when I was 7 months pregnant that my husband had got diagnosed with cancer. And so at that point is when I had to come to terms with, okay, this is the reason why I have my babies, and this is why I have my kids. And it was shortly after, it was probably within the first 5 or 6 months of him being diagnosed, that the Lord told me that at some point it was going to take his life. And I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know what that looked like. We got him stable, and we got him to a place which is called NED, no evidence of disease, which essentially means that no scan or anything could pick it up, but the cancer was still in his body and it could kind of take off at any time. And so the doctor's goal was to get him at a place of being in NED for as long as possible. And he was in NED for about 1.5 years, 2 years before the cancer came back. And when the cancer came back, it came back in his lungs. And it was at that point that both me and my husband knew that he was terminal. And so when it came back, it was September of 2014. In January, we knew that it was terminal, but we just didn't know when it was going to be. And then he passed away September, 9 months later. So it was almost a full year from when it came back. And what was really interesting is the Lord was always 2 or 3 steps ahead of me and giving me direction, giving me insight, giving me instructions of things to do that I didn't understand. But it wasn't until after he passed away that I could see that it was him taking care of me and my family and putting things into place. So for an example, something that was really interesting. So he passed away September of 2015. January of 2015, my husband had woken up and he was getting ready to go into the hospital for treatment. And he goes, "Sunshine, I had a dream last night and I saw the person that you were going to remarry. I didn't see his face, but I saw the person that you're going to remarry. I know that you're going to be taken care of. The kids are going to be taken care of. And it makes me so happy to know that everything's going to be okay." Oh. And I didn't think anything of it, but it was just, things were like that. Every couple of months we'd have a situation or something would come up. It was July of 2015 that we just both felt really impressed that we needed to get his funeral arrangements together. So he went and we picked out his casket and we wrote out, his, everything that he wanted for his funeral, everything from the flowers and who was going to speak and do the eulogy to the closing prayer to everything. And there were a couple people who thought it was really bad, negative that we were doing that. But when he passed away, things were so rough and so chaotic because my kids were only 3, 4, and 5 that it was so amazing that I didn't have to worry about everything, it was all taken care of and it was all done. And it ended up being so beautiful and so amazing to see the things that Matt, so for an example, one of the things that his name was Matt, that he wanted is he picked out a silver casket and he wanted everybody to autograph the casket. He wanted everybody to write notes or letters or pictures or whatever. And he wanted everybody that came in to sign and autograph the casket. And it was awesome. And it was amazing. And so we've got all these pictures and notes and everything on it. And he was a pilot. And so when you're flying, before you fly, there's a red piece of ribbon or whatever that's in the cockpit that you remove before you go flying. And it's remove before flight. Well, he wanted to have a ribbon that was red that says remove before flight, put into the coffin that before we lowered it to have it removed. And so my kids and I took it out. And so it was small details like that he had planned, but everything from who he wanted to say the opening prayer to everything was all taken care of. And it was so amazing, the spirit that was there and to feel him be a part of it. And so looking back, there was just so many details that the Lord was in it. And I knew that he had to go and he was being called to go back home. And there were so many times that Matt had said, "I know that there's a calling for me waiting for me, that I need to go home." And so there were so many times that we didn't see, the Lord didn't take it away and he didn't make the pain go away, but he strengthened us and gave us miracles and compensated so that we could get through it with so much peace.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, I actually think
anyone would.
That's brilliant. I think it's brilliant to, if it's coming, maybe even if you don't know it's coming, why not talk about, what would we do in that scenario? Yeah. And then leave it, I mean, even if you're not sick, why not plan that? And, and you can adjust it in time, but yeah, and just have your loved ones not have to worry about that when the time comes.
Well, and it's like we did things like my kids were really young, but I felt really impressed to get them all their quads that, for when you're baptized, you get your name on it. I felt really impressed. Again, it's like I didn't think about this at all, but it was just an impression that I had. But after the fact, I bawled. I felt really impressed to get their quads. And for me and Matt to both write in their scriptures and to take pictures of our hands with our wedding rings on top of each other, on top of each of the scriptures. And I just thought like, oh, I'll be able to give them to the kids when they're baptized. But I didn't realize at the time, because I was, taking care of them and my kids were so young, what a gift or a blessing that would be until my kids were all baptized and they were doing that. And I felt really impressed to record videos of him, like sharing, his story or his testimony and different things. Well, something that you don't ever think about is after, your loved one dies, there's a period of time, and it's the 3-month mark. The 3-month mark after somebody dies is really hard, because it's soon enough after they've died where you can still remember them, but it's long enough where it's like, I just want to hear their voice. I want to be able to see them. I want to be able to do that. And you don't think about that when you're going through it, but the Lord was aware of that. And so now I've got these videos where he has videos to each of my kids. I love you. I care about you. I want you to go on a mission. I never did because, hey, I screwed up when I was a teenager, and here's some of the things that I did. I want you to be able to learn from me, and they can see their dad and they can be able to have a message from him. I did not think of that. I did not have any part of that. Like, that was the Lord stepping in and doing that. So it was just so amazing how he was always just a couple steps ahead, giving me direction and guidance. But then after he died, I had a huge following on Facebook, because we had a Facebook group. And so I had a huge following of people that would, reach out to me. And I do a lot of bereavement work to this day. And so I do a lot of assistance for people that were either their spouse or their family is passing away. And so a lot of the things that I learned, I've been able to perfect and help give to these families as a way of preparing for a loved one to pass away that I never would have thought of if I hadn't gone through that experience myself.
I just think that that's fabulous. I thought I heard you say that people had an issue with the fact that you guys had that all kind of planned and prepared. I think that's amazing, because I think as you're going through those steps that you guys had already prepared, it was almost like you were celebrating him and remembering him, and just like he's in the spotlight in a positive way. We're doing these things because this is what he wanted. And it kind of brings a positive outlook to a rather sad situation. I think it's fabulous.
Because of the holistic ways that we were healing, I should say healing, but we were helping, giving him quality of life. He looked amazing. And so he didn't look as sick as he was. And so there were quite a few people who didn't believe that he was terminal and that he was as sick as he was. And so when they heard, oh, you're preparing for his funeral, oh, you're doing all that, why would you do that? He's fine. Where's your hope? Where's your faith that, he could be healed or that he can be strengthened? Like, you got to hold on. You've got to fight for him. You've got to do that. And so it was really hard to tell people that you just had this piece of knowing like he's being called to go back home. And so people struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that. But I think that I think it's wonderful that you opted to follow all those promptings, because easily you could have been like, I don't know, like this is kind of, maybe don't have faith, or maybe I don't have hope, which I don't believe that's the case. But like maybe you could have told yourself that and not went through with some of those things. But look at what the amazing outcome is, because you opted to follow the Spirit, and you opted to, even despite saying, okay, people might think this is, a lack of faith. I'm looking at it like that shows full faith, because you're willing to follow that prompting.
Thank you.
Well, you're accepting the answer.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways that's why the Lord trusts us with the answer, because he knows we'll accept it, whatever it is, even if it's something we wouldn't have opted for on our own. And, you were talking about that funeral, and I thought of my brother. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease, and probably one of the most healing things at his funeral. And I think this was actually just kind of impromptu, but I had an aunt who had recorded general conferences so that she could play them back. And this is back in, VHS, and my brother used to sing in the Mormon youth chorus back when there was a Mormon youth chorus.
Mm.
And she had a video of him singing in general conference with the Mormon youth chorus. And the song was I Stand All Amazed. And so at the end of the funeral, like before we took him to the cemetery, they played this on the big screen in the chapel. And he had died of Lou Gehrig's disease. So he only weighed like 95 pounds when he died. And, you know, he was like 6'2". And so it was just, we were already getting to the point where you couldn't remember him healthy. You know what I mean? Like really standing up strong. And to see him standing there, and it kept panning to him. He was like near the front row in general. And to hear that beautiful song and see him singing and fully healthy, and it just, everybody was just sobbing, you know, because here he is. And then we envisioned that's how he is now.
Yeah.
You know, that's how he is on the other side. You know, he's totally pain-free, healthy, strong. And I think things like that, you know, if in advance, you know, you can think of things like that will have that meaning. I just think that can be so incredibly healing, you know, to people. And yeah, go with it. Go with that inspiration for sure.
I think too, I mean, I remember distinctly at one point I sat on my bed because I was a mess. And, you know, it's one thing to be able to go through something, but when you're facing reality of this is a terminal prognosis, and my kids were so young, I remember distinctly one day sitting on my bed and I just felt like the wind was sucked out of me. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, I have a choice of what happens next and how I'm going to handle this. It was just a thought, like I've got a choice. And I remember so distinctively sitting on my bed saying, I know that this is going to be really hard, but I'm going to choose faith. I choose faith. And that ended up being my mantra. Like whenever I would write a Facebook post or an update on his health, at the very end, I would say, we choose faith. And I think that's what would give me that strength is I don't know what's coming. I don't know how it looks. I don't know all the details. I know what I'm feeling and I know what I'm afraid of. And I know that this is really hard. But when we say thy will be done, we're choosing to believe and to trust you. And so I remember I had to choose that. I had to choose that. It wasn't something that just came to me or, wow, Sunshine, you were so strong. You had so much faith. I had to choose that.
Wow. That's powerful.
I was going to say that when you choose faith, you're not demanding a certain outcome. You're literally you're surrendering, you're handing it over. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, you know, if the person I love lives, you know, that there will be so much about that I love and I'm grateful for. But if they don't live, you know, I know that there will be a purpose in that and that it will lead to the kind of growth me and my children need in this life, you know, and that I'll be reunited with them in the end, you know, that it's not a permanent separation, you know.
Exactly.
And that brings comfort. And then you don't have to get totally attached. You know, mindfulness actually talks about detachment from outcome. Mm-hmm. You know, that you surrender to, you know, make room for all that arises. Yep. You know, let whatever comes teach you. See it all as an opportunity, not a setback. So
when you think of surrender, or when I think of surrender, I think of sacrifice. And something in the Hebrew word, altar means the table of God. In Hebrew, that's one of the definitions for it. And so when we talk about letting go of attachment, I think essentially we're saying, I'm going to let go of the things that I'm holding on to so hard. And I'm going to put it on the table. You know, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving next week, you know, the feast and everything's being laid on the table, you know, and then there's even the analogy of Christ, even, you know, there's enough room at the table for all of us, you know, to come and join in at this feast. And we are holding and presenting all the things to him and saying, I'm giving it to you. Yeah. I'm freely giving it to you. And so when I think of letting go of attachment, letting go of, you know, the things that are bothering us or surrendering, to me, that's the analogy that I have of I'm giving it to the Savior so that he can take care of it.
Yeah. And when one of my kids eats the last piece of pie, I'm sacrificing for them and letting them, you know, take that last piece of pie without complaining about it, even though I bought the freaking pie, you know?
Even though you're the one who bought that stinking pie.
Yeah, I bought that pie from Sam's Club, but you go ahead and just eat the last of it.
But I'm a giving
That's
person,
true
so I'll let
love,
you have
man. Yeah, that's love. That's what I say.
it. Okay, so
Not that I need more pie.
well, I think we all need more pie. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's true. At least twice a year, right?
That's right. So before we go on to like the process of then being single and going through that process again, because you are married, so you had to deal with communication in the singles world, which you might not have been used to. Would you like to talk about your son real quick before we get into this other topic, or?
Oh, my son.
I want your whole story told. Like, there's so much to this lady's story. You guys would be amazed.
So this summer, as we were moving to Utah, my son, he's 10 years old. He got diagnosed with the same cancer that my husband passed away from. And he got diagnosed with a stage 2 diagnosis. And so that's been bringing up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings, and knowing that that's going to be a part of his life for the rest of his life too. And so it's been an opportunity to surrender, to let go on a totally different level, because I think it's hard when you don't know what's coming and you don't know what that journey looks like. And then when you've already walked down that path and you've already experienced it, and then you're experiencing it again. And then there is the possibility of Heavenly Father might want him to come home too. And being aware of that, it's been a great invitation for me to heal and to rely on a deeper level.
And are you relying on that same methods that you used with your husband to try to deal with this?
Yeah. And I mean, where I'm at professionally and emotionally and spiritually, I've grown so much, more education and more knowledge. And so in some ways I feel like, I've got different tools and different things to be able to help draw on. And at the same time, it really helps to go back and read journals and see where I was at, and to see the strength that was there to kind of help remind me, okay, you got this. This is fine. This is okay.
That's awesome. And I think cool. I can tell, I mean, I didn't know you before this. I mean, we've had a few interactions in written word, but just like listening to you and hearing your story, your voice, the way you articulate, the positiveness in what you have to say. Like, I just think that obviously the Lord has blessed you with a lot of faith and a lot of like positive vibes, if you will. And because I'm not sure how I would handle having lost a spouse and then having to deal with a child. I mean, I don't know, because I've never been in that situation, but I think that you're a fabulous example of just leaning on faith, because that's what it seems like to me. You're like, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to lean on the Lord and know that he's going to guide me through it no matter what, and that he'll be there for me no matter what.
Thank you.
That's just a strength that I just think is fabulous. I just don't know if I have it. So
I appreciate that so much.
I don't know how you do that, but
that means so much. I think something that has really helped that I've learned for myself is Jesus is in the details of our lives. So much of my life, I felt invisible. I felt like, how could you even care about me? There's so many things that I've endured in my life that have been super hard. And there's been so many times where I felt, you don't even care. Do you not even care what I'm giving to you? Do you not even care about my effort? Do you not care about the sacrifice? There was a time after my husband did pass away, being a single mom, widowed single mom was super hard. A lot of my friends that were divorced, they were able to have every other weekend off to where they could go date or they could have girls' nights. But being a widow, I didn't have that opportunity to be able to have help with my kids. And I remember there was one time I was so mad and I was so angry at the Lord. And I realized that there was a part of me that didn't trust him. And so I started exploring that, and I realized that I felt angry because I felt invisible. I felt like, do I not matter? Does it not matter what I've gone through? I've tried so hard. I've kept the commandments. I've gone to church. I've done all the things. I've crossed all the boxes, and I feel like you're ignoring me. I feel like you don't care about me. And I really struggled. And I remember it was around Christmas time. I remember that I was reading, in the New Testament. And it hit me so hard when Christ was on the cross and he wasn't prepared for that divine withdrawal. And he goes, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And at that moment, I realized that Christ gave me the permission to feel forsaken, to feel abandoned, to feel like, where the heck are you? Do you not care? Because he went through it first. And so that was like my ground zero, where I said, okay, we're going to talk about this. Like, we're going to hash it out. Like, I love you. You're my dad, but I'm mad at you and I need you to show up and I need you to talk to me and I need you to be a part of my life. And it was from there that he let me see, I'm in the details of your life. Right. I may not always take it away because it's in your greatest good. There's a lesson for you, or there's something for you to gain at it, but I'm in the details of your life. I care about the details and I want to do that with you. And so I think that when you know, it's kind of like when you have a best friend or you have somebody that means a lot to you that you can turn on to. I think that's what makes it easier for you to lean on them, is because you have that relationship where they're in the details of your life.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah. And I love that you were able to say, hey, I struggled, and I was like, hey, what's up? Why are you not there for me? I think sometimes people struggle with telling that to my father. Like, he already knows you're thinking it anyway. He already knows what you're feeling, the thoughts and how you're feeling. It's okay to tell him exactly what's on your mind. Like, he can handle that.
Exactly.
Once we let it out and say it, that's therapeutic, first of all. And it allows us to be like, okay, now I've been all open. I've been honest. I'm giving you everything. And even if it's like, Heavenly Father, I'm not happy right now with you, I'm gonna let you know this. I think that gives him the opportunity to be like, I know you're not happy, but I'm gonna embrace you and hug you and help you, because this is what my plan is, or this is what the outcome is going to be. And I think sometimes when we kind of suppress it or don't acknowledge it, it just messes with us. So I don't know. I think it's great. Like, Heavenly Father is all about bring it on. Let me know what you're thinking. I'm going to help you through it.
Well, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think sometimes in our culture, we think like, oh, I can't be mad, or I can't feel that way because that means I'm not using the atonement, or I'm not showing faith, or I'm not showing whatever that is. But like I said, for me, it was so amazing to feel relieved of, wow, Christ gave me permission to feel this way. Like, he did it. Why have you forsaken me? Why have you left? Like, he could have easily been like, whoa, hold up. This is not part of what we discussed. Right. I'm pulling myself down here. And until you can kind of fill me in and let me know, I'm not going any further, but he was like, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Exactly. He was so willing to say, I don't understand, but I trust you. I'm willing to do that for you. And that was so powerful for me, of realizing, no, this is how I feel, and we're going to hash it out. Like this, I am so mad at you. Like, I feel abandoned. I feel like you do not care about what I've gone through or what I've done for you. Does it even matter? Right.
Well, I think there's a lot about that story on both ends that teach us. And, that night when he's suffering, that teaches us about the beginning of suffering. Mm-hmm. But there's things he did on the cross where we're at the end of the experience that he teaches us about. When is the lesson over? When is the trial over? And I think a lot of members of the church want to get to the Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do moment, mm-hmm. before they've gone through the, let this cup pass from me moment. Yeah. And really, it's a whole process, because what he's teaching us the night before, couldn't you have stayed awake a little longer with me? There's almost this, I'm appealing to God to, can I not suffer like this? I'm appealing to my brethren. Can you just stay awake with me and be here and support me? And so it's letting you know that, this really hurt, mm-hmm. And to feel completely alone in this. But then you think about what he said. There's something that happens in less than 24 hours. Where all of it, after a while, the suffering is put into perspective. There's some kind of transformation in him, because it said that the purpose of that for him was to teach him how to succor his people. How can I bless the lives of people when for the pain of sins I've never committed, or, the consequences of sin that I've never experienced? Now I've experienced not only those consequences, but for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I know precisely what every suffering is like for each person. And now what do I say? Woman, behold thy son. Mm-hmm. I thirst, meaning I'm not complaining about it. I'm just letting you know that I'm thirsty. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Meaning, I get it now. They're doing the best they can with what they know, and they don't realize how evil it is what's happening. And so I do think we need to get there eventually, whether in this life or the next. But to presume that we're going to get there, without being able to express the pain.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge that, I think that's a little presumptuous, especially since we're not Jesus, know. And
well, I love how you broke that down, because you you illustrated that he's in the details. He gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it. And so
he gets he gets what it's like to not feel healed and like it's over. And he gets what it's like to feel like I've learned the lessons and I'm ready to meet my maker. I'm ready for the suffering to end because its purpose has been fulfilled.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Exactly. And so I think in our lives, it's like when we're angry and we're upset and it's like we have a tendency of pushing him away, he gets it, he felt abandoned. When we feel like we're alone and we feel like, doesn't anybody care about me? Can you not watch and pray with me? All the different things that we go through in our life that we feel like nobody cares. It doesn't matter to you. Like, I'm just one person. He's in the details. He cares.
Yeah.
He really cares about what happens in our life.
And then while he's still suffering to get to the place where it's okay, I don't expect you to get what I'm going through, or I know God hasn't abandoned me, and then the suffering ends. And I'm sure you saw some of that surrender in your husband. I saw it in my brother.
Yeah.
Where there's no more bitterness, there's no more resentment, there's no more fear, or any kind of negative emotion. It's all just like, I get it now.
Yeah.
And that's just in a way, when my brother and my father died about a year apart, and I was there for both of when they passed. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a hard moment to witness this, but I really look back on those experiences, probably two of the most sacred experiences of my entire life, was being present with them while they went to the other side,
Totally. Yes.
And it was awesome.
Yes.
In that respect.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the last 30 days of his life. My house was transformed into a temple. It was sacred ground. The hospice workers would just naturally take off their shoes, and everybody, it didn't matter if they were religious or whatever. Some of his friends were atheists, and it was amazing that it's like they would enter the home, and it's like they would always go back like that. And they would just kind of like, wow, there's something different here about this house. Everybody would say it. And it was just that's amazing. It was transformed into a temple. My house was turned into sacred ground. And those moments were so powerful to me, because there's so many experiences that I had that I think I'm also grateful for that pain, for that experience, because it's kind of like Adam and Eve, right? Without understanding the bitter, without experiencing the hard, you don't experience the sweet. And so being able to really experience the spirit and gratitude and love, and there's no way, I don't think I would have had that experience without that. So I'm really grateful.
That's amazing.
You guys are both awesome, because this is the thing. I still complain. I still am like, Heavenly Father, like, have I
did too.
Have I not dealt with enough? Like, I feel like the whole divorce, like prior to the divorce, it's been years. It was like 7 years scenario, and it's still going. Like, it's still, now I've got a co-parent, and now my ex's choices are affecting my children. And I feel like it's like, have I not done enough? Like, I feel like I've dedicated my life to like protecting my kids and somehow making everything work, and it hasn't. And so I just feel like I need a reprieve. Like, I need a vacay from my life for a little bit. And it just seems like it's one thing after another. And sometimes I get so like, I don't really wallow in things, but I'm just like, seriously, Heavenly Father, can you just give me like a window of time where like things feel a little more constant, and I don't like to feel like unstable, like where like my foundation is kind of moving or whatever. Like, I need solid something solid to stand on. And I feel like my life is just nowhere near solid. So you guys are awesome. You're being very
Well, maybe
So I
the
feel that way
lesson,
too.
you know, maybe the lesson is learning to feel at peace with unstable ground, but that doesn't mean you have to get it right now. Or, I mean, that may take time. It may be even in the next life, you know, you certainly can have, you have compassion for people who struggle with that more than most. And I do think it's harder, and research bears this out. You know, with my brother and with Sunshine's husband, you know, there was no choices that would have changed the outcome, meaning no one did anything wrong
right.
to get Lou Gehrig's disease or cancer. You know, I mean, everybody was doing the best they could with what they knew. I think what makes it harder is when someone chooses a path that does damage, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
And like you said, Sunshine, your home becomes a temple. You're married to a guy who, you know, he's ready. He feels like there's a mission for him on the other side. There's something very different about that, and someone who blatantly rejects, you know, their beliefs and acts in ways that are damaging to other people. That's a hard pill to swallow in a special way. And I'm so glad I didn't have to deal with that with the people I lost. You know, I didn't worry about their immortal souls.
Right.
I just felt the sorrow of missing them.
Yeah.
You know, and you would think that that would be really, I mean, that is hard, you know, but there's also this promise that I will see them again, and have the prospect of seeing them forever, where that hopelessness you feel for people who just blatantly reject the God. I don't even worry about people who sort of stray. You know, I figure like the Lord can reach beyond the veil and somehow draw them back to some extent. It's just that open rebellion stuff that scares me. It scares me in myself, to be honest. Like, I don't want any of that in me either.
Right.
And that's what I've talked to my kids about. I just said, I don't worry if you want to, if you're tempted to break commandments. I'm not even terribly worried if you make mistakes and you do break commandments. But that open rebellion where you just say God can take his commandments and stick them. Yeah, that will scare me as your father, you know, like that will really shake me to my bones. So.
I was just reading today, ironically, in Hebrews 10, I think, like maybe verse 28-ish, 29. And it was talking about how, you know, those who make choices when they know, and I'm mutilating it, but those who make choices when they know they're rebelling in nature, like that's when your sins are no longer covered. Like the protection for your sins being covered by Satan, I mean, by Savior, it never longer remains. Now, I also believe that the Lord understands the person's heart and where they really, you know, do they really have a true testimony? Do they really have a complete knowledge? But it was pretty blunt. I was reading it and I was like, that's pretty like cut and dry. Like if you know, and you openly still rebel, like that kind of removes you from the equation. So,
and it's not just an intellectual knowing. It's like you've
right.
had a testimony. You've had deep and abiding
exactly
sense that this is true, and then you turn on it. That's rough, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, it gave me a little bit to think of today. That's just ironic that tied in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward then and get on to our topic, which is communication. So why don't you tell us, Sunshine, how once you got back into the dating scene, how you managed, how long were you married? Did we already ask that?
I was married 10 years before he died.
10 years. Okay. So you weren't out too long. I mean, I was out 25 years. So by the time I got back into dating, I was like, this whole world is totally different from when I was dating the first time around. So, but how did you deal with, I'm sure it was more online dating, things like that. How did you manage the communication?
The dating was really difficult for me, like as a widow, because the very first, so these are the 3 questions that were asked. So, hey, what's up? How's it going? What are you up to? You know, where are you from? You know, type thing. And, are you divorced? Like what happened? You know, what happened? Well, the minute that I would say that I am a widow, then the very next question would be, oh, are you sealed? And then crickets, run for the hills. And so dating was really interesting for me, being a widow, because it was very different. It was like I was given interview questions to kind of, see where I was at. And then it was like, okay, I'm gone. I'm history. Since I didn't have somebody to help me necessarily with my kids, it was a lot of, for the first year and a half, 2 years, I really didn't date a whole lot. It wasn't that I wasn't looking, but I just was focused on living my life the way that I wanted to live, the way that I felt like I needed to. And I just had the intention of, if I meet somebody, that's great. And if not, like, that's fine. So I would go to activities and I would, get to meet people, but I wasn't actively pursuing or looking for a relationship. And then eventually I got on to mutual because I wasn't getting anywhere and everybody kept nagging me. And that's where I found my now husband.
Really?
Yeah.
Mutual worked for you.
Mutual worked for me.
Mutual, so that's awesome. So tell us your story about your new husband.
So that one is very unique too. We had matched and I wasn't really on the app a whole lot because I wasn't really interested. And so we started talking, and I had eventually put on my profile kind of more of like the behavior side of me. I was like, okay, I'm going to take off some of these things because I want people to get to know me for me. And so I didn't say that I was widowed, and I didn't say that I had kids because I wanted to have people get to know me and build a relationship with me first. And so we started talking. And he made the comment one day and we hadn't even gotten on the phone yet because I just was very slow. I was weeding out the people. And he made the comment, I normally don't talk to people who have never been married before. And I said, actually, I'm widowed and I've got 3 kids. And I think his eyes popped out of his head over his phone. And we started talking, and we had our first phone conversation, and we talked for like 5 or 6 hours. And, within 2 or 3 days, it was, hey, I want to come out and meet you. Cause it's hard when you have, young kids. And, he came out and met me, and we pretty much eloped. Like, we pretty much got married right away. So
really? That's
yeah,
awesome.
we didn't get engaged. I didn't get like the engagement ring. I didn't get it. We pretty much just eloped. And so we've been married 3 years, but I had said, like, sure, okay, I'll get married to you, but I want to be able to have a wedding. Like, I want to have a real wedding. And he kept promising me and promising me and promising me. So sometime
it'll be like your 10-year anniversary wedding or
something. So at some point we are going to have a ceremony, or I don't want to say redo, but
right.
Well,
how long from start to elope?
You don't even want to know. You don't even know.
Okay, we're gonna have John guess. Guess when you take a
guess. It
was
no, I'll
6
tell
weeks.
you, everybody's eyes are gonna pop out of their head. It was a month from start to finish. It was a month.
All right. That's
yeah,
kind of Mormon
girl,
style.
you go. But here's the more important question: does it work?
So he's got 4 girls. So I've got 4 bonus kids. So between the 2 of us, we've got 7 kids. So blending, and he's divorced. He was divorced. So blending 2 families has been really difficult, totally different lifestyles and backgrounds and everything. And we've had a lot of trials and a lot of struggles. And so it's, there have really been some rocky moments, but it has totally worked. Like, we are a great fit. We are a great couple. Something that I love about him so much is he is so good about incorporating Matt. Matt's my late husband, incorporating Matt into our family, into our life.
That's awesome.
And so when it's Matt's birthday, he goes out and we celebrate Matt's life. And when it's his anniversary of his death, his angelversary, like, he's right there when the kids are missing him. He's right there to, let's talk about your dad and let's include him. And we have pictures of him around the house. And he's so good about just loving on Matt. And he's just a part of the family.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome. Because I think sometimes people feel threatened in that situation.
Yes.
Which it doesn't make any sense. The person's no longer here, but they feel threatened by the memory in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
awesome.
awesome.
I think too, from what I've seen from other widows and widowers, is I think the other person's like, well, I want you to love me too. Like, I don't want to be forgotten. I don't want to be left out. I don't want to be, which is totally normal, because I've put myself honestly in the situation of, what if it was me on the receiving end? How would I feel? How would I do? And I honestly don't know how I would do I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I'm that person who really struggles with polygamy. I really struggle with it. And so I'm like, I want to have a person that just loves me and I belong to them and they're my person. And so for my new husband, I shouldn't say new, but my current husband, his name is Steve. He's been so amazing about, I'm not even worried about it. Like, I love you and I care about you and it'll all work out and it's not a big deal. And I got a diamond in the rough.
And again, it's that focus on faith. Like, I don't know the answers. I don't know how it's gonna work out in the end, like when it comes to ceilings and all that stuff. But there's just faith and knowing that it'll all work out.
He's
And
so
everyone.
amazing. Yeah. So amazing.
That's awesome.
It reminds me of a quote from there was a message given by President Eyring, and I think it was him quoting one of the presidents of the church. And basically they counseled with someone who was really worried about a child who had gone astray. And what will happen to our family, like if we are separated from this child or, whatever. And this quote was basically, if you could see the family arrangements for the faithful after this life, you would completely be at peace and you would knowing that God will make everything right. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like just surrender again to that notion, that even there's, for the faithful, there's opportunities to visit people, like we don't even need to, worry about kingdoms and of glory and stuff like that. What we need to focus on is just get myself back to God, get myself back home, and then let him tell me how beautiful it's going to be when it all sorts out. And I think that's the case with, marriages where, we're sealed to one person, they pass away, and that's why I don't think as men in the church, we need to worry about that so much. I think even if, you're with Matt in the eternities, I know that you and Steve will always have, like, there will be this amazing relationship, and this gratitude that you were there for me during my mortal life at a time when I really needed that support and strength, and then he'll be blessed too, and have opportunities, with someone else. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always try to tell my kids, I'm like, it's kind of like we're infants here on earth, even if we're adults. We're just so young and we just really can't wrap our brain around some of the truths. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means we can't understand them. It's like trying to take a 2-year-old and teaching them exactly how, electricity works. Like they're going to, all they know is flip on the light and here comes, flip the switch and here comes a light. Like if you tried to explain to them the process, they'd be looking at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I think that that's sometimes for us as humans here on this earth, we're like, we want the answer. Give me the answer. Mm-hmm. But it's so far above us. Heavenly Father's like, I can't even explain it to you. You wouldn't understand. So just understand that you just have to have faith that if you flip that switch, the light's going to come on. You don't need to know how it all works. It'll be okay. You got your light. Right. Just accept it as is, because you're not going to understand if I even try to explain.
And the idea is as we become gods, we will understand those answers. Right. And then we'll be like, well, of course.
Yeah.
That's how it was always going to be. Of course we were fine the whole time. Of course, like God had us in his hands. He was in the details the whole time. It's just that right now that's really hard to see.
It is.
So we cry like little kids. Oh no, I'm scared of the dark. And it's like, I have compassion for that too, so
yeah,
I'm sure he does too.
It's hard when you want answers.
Right.
Why does this light turn on? Whatever. And you don't get them. You just get the peace or the calm or it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Like, why is my loved one gone so early? Yeah. Why, or why, are we going to find love within another marriage? But, why does that have to end? Or And at some point we just got to hand those questions over. Yeah. And just say, I don't know about that. I just know I'm supposed to be with this person.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's like, especially within the LDS singles realm, I swear that the why word is probably used so much because there's just so many different stories, so many different, just situations were like, why does this have to happen? Or why did I meet this person? It didn't work out. Or why did I meet this person and it almost worked out, but then whatever happened? Like there's just so many like moving parts. And so I just think, as we were just saying,
Yeah, and we'll
just
even
focus
see,
on faith.
yeah, we'll see divorce as like some horrible thing. And when in reality, why, could there be some good reasons on why I had a relationship that didn't succeed? And are there lessons that could teach me, to help me have a beautiful relationship eventually, and yeah, I like the idea that even our worst setbacks can become our greatest lessons, and they're not meant to hurt us, they're meant to prepare us to be happy.
I agree.
I think
So
so. Like my youngest, she's just now learning long division, and my oldest is learning pre-algebra. And it was interesting, like even today, my daughter, my oldest, is trying to explain her homework to my husband because he was checking her homework. And my youngest is like, I don't understand it. And it's so hard. And what about this? And da da da. And I think life is kind of like math, we start off and we progress and work our way. But then I think when we ask the why questions, I think it really matters about what state are we communicating that from. There's a difference between asking why because we're seeking for understanding, because we're seeking to put and align our will with his, and we're wanting to grow. And
Right.
there's asking the why of, I'm feeling sorry for myself. This isn't fair. This isn't, why did you do this to me? What am I supposed to do now? And so I think it goes back to that surrendering again. When we're willing to surrender and let go, and maybe sometimes it's, what is your plan? What is it that you're wanting me to learn from this? How do you feel about me? Can you tell me what you feel about me? Am I okay with you? Am I all right with you? Can you tell me a gift that I have, or can you tell me what I got out of this, or did I make a mistake? But we ask questions from a place of really trying to seek to be aligned. I think that's where maybe we're not going to get the full answer, but I really believe that we can get direction to move us forward and launch us in a direction to give us an
yeah,
Mhm.
yep. And I work with troubled kids, and they'll say, what do I, they want to go home. They're in a RTC. They're in a place where it's very structured, and it's because they didn't manage their life well. They were out of control. And I've come up with this phrase where it's basically, don't tell me with your mouth, tell me with your life, that you're ready to go home. And it's really interesting because it's like, it's easy to say I'm ready to go home. And one of the ways I know they're ready to go home is they don't push to go home. And to me, before we get to that moment of it is finished, we got to have that moment of, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This total surrender, and I'm at peace. I'm at peace. Yep. And it's like, oh, you're at peace. So I'm no longer wanting the cup to pass from me. And now I'm ready to say, it is finished.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, because it's like, I think, Celeste was talking about, you've got so many storms that you're battling right now. And I think a lot of times we look at it and say, oh, well, when I'm not in the situation anymore, or when this passes, then I'll be able to feel so much better. Then I'll be happier. Then I can take the vacation. Then I'll be able to relax. And we are in an era where that's not going to happen. We're told in the scriptures, we're told that we are in the refiner's fire. And I think it's a matter of finding the invitation so that we can find peace where we are at in our journey, even when the storms are raging on.
Right. Like that's what I've kind of come to this understanding within myself. I'm like, okay, Celeste, I think this is just life. If I'm not struggling with an ex or my children and their struggles or whatever, there's still going to be something in my life that I'm struggling with. Like that's where the lessons are. And that's where we are. Like you said, we are in the refiner's fire. That is what molds us and shapes us. So I tell myself, like, you can't expect it all to go away. Like you can't, because then you stop progressing, you stop changing, you stop becoming like Christ, right? So we do want that resistance, because that's what makes us stronger. And so I tell myself that, and I know logically that my heart is just like, I just want like a short leg break.
I
But
don't know about, I don't know about you guys, but studying Joseph Smith's life has been so good for my soul this year. Being able to get out of the chapters with Liberty Jail and with him, writing and saying, I want it, like, it was my lot to tread through deep waters, and, seeing his experience in Liberty Jail and going back and really studying his life. I mean, you look at a man, all he wanted to do when he was a teenager is he just wanted to ask a question, and he was just trying to do the right thing. Like, it was admirable that he was just trying to do. And his whole life stemmed from one prayer. And that's not his fault. Like, he was just trying to ask a really great question. And that was really admirable. And look at what turned his life into.
yeah.
And I loved how he was so willing to say, and even in Liberty Jail, he starts off by saying, my God, how long are you going to stay your hand? Where are you? How long are you going to allow us to suffer? But then he leaves Liberty Jail saying, I have found succor. I have found strength. I have found my support. And he goes to praising God and giving glory, just a couple of sections later, within a year later, getting to that pace of, I'm finished. Like, thy will be done. I'm okay. Like,
well, and notice, as soon as that level of humility and resilience is reached, next thing you know, oh, we're going to transport you to another jail. Oh, and then somebody who's transporting you is going to say, go ahead and leave. I don't think this is right. I mean, just things start to happen that, oh, okay, it's over now, you know? And I think that's, and I think in these last days, we need to be really aware of that, because I think we opted for this, and I don't think we've seen the end of this. Of our moment in history is not over. And I think it could get pretty depraved here. In the very near future. But it's almost like, I feel like if we have, to the level we have surrendered, I feel like we go from fear of that kind of thing to almost excitement, like, bring it, you know what I mean? Right. And it doesn't mean I'm begging for trials and that I want to have pain. It's just that I'm here. Yeah. And whether I like it or not, I'm here. So if I'm going to have to go through it, let's do it.
It's kind of like that scripture's like, my God is with me, so who shall I fear? Like, right. I think if we can get to that point, it's like, you know what? If I have faith, I don't need fear. Like, and I know that's so easily said, right? But if we know that the Lord is with us, just like, Joseph Smith learned, like, if hell opens up and tries to suck you in, like, it's still going to be for your benefit, because you can still learn from it. So he allows those things into our life to refine us. But we have to realize it's okay. Like, we have faith. He'll carry me through this. The outcome, whatever it may be, can be used for my benefit. It's easy. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done in the moment, but I think it's true. Like, honestly, if we have God on our side, and if we've invited him into our life, and if we have faith in him, it doesn't matter what's going on around us. It really doesn't matter. So,
well, and we almost make it to where he can't help but bless us. And that's why I think hope comes after faith, is because at some point that faith, which is almost like a belief in the dark, he can't help but shine light on that. And as soon as you see that light, that's where the hope comes from. You start to realize, oh yeah. Like, my faith is being fulfilled, and so I have hope. And I think when that hope reaches that perfect day, like they talk about, to me, the gift that comes with that is charity. I mean, I feel like when your faith is complete and your hope is complete, there's nothing left for you to do but feel love. And so is it shocking that Father forgive them, or they know not what they do, happens then. Did you lose me there for a second?
That's okay. You came back.
Okay. But at that point, charity is, and so what it says in the last days, blessed are those who have charity, and why is that? Because that's the sure sign that you're really getting it, is that you just you're guided by love, the pure love of Christ, not just any love, but something really pure and beautiful. And at that point, there's nothing that scares you,
Yeah, because you don't need fear at that.
Yeah, if your child's in a burning car and you go, yeah, I'm not afraid of that. Like, I will go do whatever I got to do out of charity, out of just pure love.
And
So
there is a differentiation between like an instinctual fear, like I'm not going to go jump off a mountain because that's scary, versus a fear of like the future, I guess.
yeah,
Isn't that there's a differentiation there, because I could still be scared jumping out of an airplane with my parachute on. That's a fear, but it's
yeah, I'm
not
not
like
talking.
a,
I
yeah.
think charity can lead us to feel fear and still act in according to God's will. Like there's still that surrender, even if you still feel afraid.
Yeah, I just think
Yeah,
sometimes in our language, since we use those two types of
right.
fear, it gets kind of interchanged. But there's absolutely an instinctual fear that's a part of being human. That's not
Yeah,
what we're
there's
talking
no
about.
shame in fear at all. But allowing fear to control us,
Right.
that's what we were sent to overcome. I don't even think there's shame in that. But I mean, eventually the hope is that we'll learn to let love conquer that at some point. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
So just we're about to the point where we're going to let the audience participation open up. So if there is anybody who wants to ask a question, make a comment. I know we were talking about communication. It kind of really didn't go down that route very well.
ended with faith, hope,
But
and
you know
charity.
what? We wing it here sometimes. And if it's a good conversation, we just go with it. But if anyone wants to ask a question, make a comment, just let us know by raising your hand in the chat. Or I guess not in the chat, but on your whatever it is, your picture, and we will take those. So Sunshine, why don't you give us a quick rundown while we're waiting for hands on what would be if someone came to you and said, okay, I need help with communication. I don't even know how to talk to the opposite sex or whatever. Like, what is your, just really quick, like a rundown of what would be the highlights?
To me, I think communication begins with being connected to ourselves and being aware of our feelings and having a relationship with us. I think a lot of times we have more than we are different, we're more alike than we are different. Something that I feel very passionately is we all have the desire to want to feel that we're enough, to feel that we're loved, to feel like that we're needed, to feel like we belong. I feel like we all have those core needs. And I think, we all have experienced pain and trauma and heartache and suffering, and our bodies are carnal, and our bodies are so good at taking care of us. Like that's what they're programmed to do, is to take care of us. And so we learn to cope. And sometimes it's through putting up walls, and other times it's running away and shutting down, or, through addictions or shopping or overworking or whatever. But when it comes to communication, I think it begins with communicating with ourselves and being in tune with our feelings and being able to be aware of what we feel and what we're going through and what we need and what we desire, so that when we speak, we're speaking as ourselves authentically, like who we really are, not with a hidden agenda or trying to get somewhere or trying to accomplish something.
Or just saying what you think they want to hear. That's never a good thing.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of couples, and one of the first things they'll say, sometimes they don't know what the problem is. They don't even know what to say. But very often they'll fall back to, we want to learn to communicate better. And my first question when they say that is, well, what do you want to say? And they have no idea what they want to say. Or they want to say how much you've hurt me and how angry I am at you. And I said, well, I tell you what, let's take communication and we'll talk about it. But first, can we figure out what message do we really want to send? And like you said, Sunshine, it's like, if you're not in tune with yourself and aware of your better, like the better version of yourself in there somewhere, if that healing hasn't taken place, anything you want to I don't want to make you a better communicator of your wound.
Yeah.
Right.
I want you to learn to communicate your healing, like your love, the parts of you that have been buried, so.
Well, and feelings and communication go hand in hand. One of the very first questions I always ask a client is, what do you feel? Or what are you feeling?
Right.
And so many times the answer starts off with, I don't know. And so it's the invitation to open you up to connect with yourself, because so many of us are so numb, not because we want to be, but because we are tired of running, or we're surviving, or we've been in so much pain that we're just trying to compartmentalize or whatever. But a lot of times we can't answer the question of what is it that I'm feeling? Sometimes it's a very surface level emotion, but then when you start digging, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
And you give an
It's
answer.
almost like I do emotionally focused therapy with couples, and it's almost like you got to not only know how you feel, but how you feel under the feeling.
Exactly. The root, the thing that's down here.
What you think you feel could actually be a distraction from what you actually feel. And if we don't get to how you feel underneath, which is usually things that draw us closer, things like hurt and, I'm afraid, I'm hurt, instead of I'm angry and I want to punish you, it's that pushes away. And boy, you've probably seen it when people tap into that underlying emotion. It can be incredibly powerful.
That's when people open up, when a person opens up and they expose their true self, then, and you're living from your true authentic self, then there's no need for filters. There's no need for walls. There's no need for facades. There's no need to try to prove yourself. No need to earn love. No need to, you're able to show up as yourself. And so I really believe that feelings and being connected to ourselves and communication go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And once you are so connected to yourself and connected to your feelings, it's natural to communicate that, whether it's gratitude or pain or hurt. Everything is the foundation of speaking, right? When we are talking to our Heavenly Father, it is through communication. When we are showing love, it's communication. We are expressing hurt, it's communication. You can't have any form of communication without being connected to some type of emotion.
Yeah. Well, because it's beyond an intellectual discussion. The most important discussions aren't I wouldn't say they're not intellectual, but they're not just intellectual.
Exactly.
They always invariably include emotion.
Exactly.
Because without emotion, you're just never going to seal the deal on change or on connection or on, so many of these things. Without that emotional component, it's going to be fleeting. It's going to be a 2 to 4 week, I'll do better. And then we're going to go right back to it. A month later, you're going to be back to the same old patterns. So.
Exactly. The one question that I always get the answer to from my clients is I'll say, what is it that you want most? And the one answer that I get the most is I just want to feel loved. I just want to be loved.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm saying. Like it's universal that we all have the same need,
no doubt,
craving and desire to be loved. And so I think how we act and operate is to earn love, to earn respect, to earn value, to earn acceptance. But the underlying all that is we just want to be loved. We just want to know that we're enough and that we matter.
Yeah.
So
that's
I'm
awesome.
Sorry for kind of missing out on a big chunk of this. My wonderful internet company decided to have an outage right in the middle of this whole thing. So that was fantastic. We're just now back up again, I guess. So
all right, good night, everybody.
That's right. Yeah,
Whatever.
we'll go ahead and we'll call it a night.
Yeah. We're
So
just leaving Everett. So
as you guys are talking, I mean, it sounds fantastic for people who are in therapy. However, I always kind of wonder about people who are maybe fresh off a divorce, or maybe a spouse just recently passed away or something. They're new to that single scene and they have all this hurt and pain. And then they just sort of like want to get that replacement, they want to jump into a rebound relationship. I want to cover up these pains. And if I can just find someone to fill that void that I now feel like I have in my life, everything will be okay. How do you break through to somebody who doesn't even understand that they need to take that first step and heal first rather than replace the pain? Because I think that's almost a very difficult reality to come to yourself, right? Like, okay, rather than dating right now, that's probably not what I need. I need to step back and heal. When my entire body and like, it feels like my soul is telling me, I just want to replace this person and be in a relationship again. And we see that play out all the time on the Facebook groups, right?
Sure.
Dating groups.
I see that a lot with my clients. And so for me, and professionally, I look at it as, why are they choosing to make that choice? What's that need? What need are they trying to fulfill? Right? It's a coping mechanism, right? And I think it goes back to wanting to be loved, wanting to be cared about, wanting to be seen, wanting to feel like you matter. And then there's other underlying fears, fear of being alone, fear of being abandoned. How am I going to be taken care of? Well, at least if I'm here, at least I've got security, or at least I've got somebody that's giving me physical attention, or, whatever. And so for me, I like to look at the root of the problem as, okay, what's triggering this? What's the need to what's making somebody react that way? So then I usually will work backwards and we'll focus on what that need is. How can we help them to see that they are loved, that they are seen? Or what work can they do? What things can they do on a daily basis to love themselves, to build a relationship with themselves and be connected to them, so that they are being able to make steps to heal and grow and move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And then you get peer pressure, like from people trying to, find out who your crush is and almost like push you into pairing off.
those
you know,
people,
and
Those
yeah,
people are only have positive, loving thoughts in their mind when they're doing stuff.
yeah.
those people
they
probably
say.
suffer from OCD
Okay.
a little bit.
Even if those people suffer from OCD a little bit, or maybe a lot.
Sorry, Sunshine, we're dragging you into a pre-show discussion.
Okay.
No, you're good.
So
Well,
just like, heaven
here's-
forbid we should take our time,
right,
like
right.
have to, go right to that, pairing off. But oh well.
I think the hardest thing that people run into is just that awareness. These things and these techniques you're talking about are fantastic. And I 1000% agree with everything you're saying. It's just getting people to that point to recognize this is really where I'm at in my progress, not somewhere else, but this is where I'm at. And
Sure.
How many people have we seen? And from what I understand, you and your husband now were a very quick romance, right? But you probably went through a bit of a healing process to get to a point where you're ready.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who want to just jump that gun, get into a relationship, and that will heal their problems.
I
And so
totally
that-
agree with you.
Yeah, that to me is like dangerous territory. And that's probably, in my opinion, why we see this revolving door of marriage, divorce, second marriage, higher divorce rates, third marriage, even higher, et cetera, right? It just continually keeps going down that road, same road.
Well,
again.
I think a pattern that I'm seeing is, I think a lot of us in the world today, we have a tendency of running away from ourselves. The minute that we feel pain, the minute that we feel any type of emotion, I feel like we've gotten so desensitized by electronics and society and everything, like our nose is stuck in a phone or something, to where we have desensitized and numbed down our feelings, that any time we're triggered by an emotion, we run away from ourselves. And it's, what can I do to make me feel better? And so I think the beginning step is being willing to consciously choose, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to turn up the quiet in my life, and I'm going to learn to confront myself. I'm going to learn to love myself. I'm going to be in a relationship with myself and get to know me and get to know my pain and sit here and go through it. And I think that's the first step, and being willing to make that choice.
And that's a hard step, though, because that
Yeah,
is, I've got to delve into the reality that's within me. And sometimes the reality that's in there is really difficult to cope with.
And so that's where it goes back to is, we say like, oh, well, when, you've got Christ in your life, you've got that hope and you've got that strength and you've got that ability. But then I think there's that part of, there's people that say, but I don't know that Christ is there for me. I don't know that he's on my side. I don't know that. And so I think that's where you get to make a choice of, what do I want to do? Am I willing to confront myself and be quiet and sit with myself? And, maybe that's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think there is a point where, because I'm trying to reflect on my healing process. And I think once I realized I would be okay, it was almost like, okay, I'm good enough. Because I kind of have, and it's still kind of lingering, I kind of have this, I'm not very lovable type of thoughts in my mind. And so as I was healing, and the Lord was surely trying to tell me that that's not the case, but all of my life, it's kind of been like the message. So once I was like, okay, you know what, Celeste, you're a good person and you've got a good heart, and you're going to be okay. You're going to make it through this. You're going to find someone. And so, and just that was like a little switch just went off like this. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, it was almost like, I was like, I was giving up on all the lies that Satan was trying to convince me of. And I was accepting the truth that the Lord was so desperately trying to help me understand and accept. And then it was like, okay, then I was like, this improvement was just, I just started skyrocketing. I was just like, yes, I've got this. And I started talking, thinking about, well, how do I feel? What do I want? What will I settle for? What will I not? Like I just, it was like everything just opened up before me because I was willing to just accept the truth that I am in fact lovable. And it was hard though. It was really hard for me to delve that deep into myself, to even acknowledge that I felt that way, to have that switched.
Mhm.
So
In the world of science and neuroscience, and in the world of mindfulness, there's a woman, her name was Louise Hay. She made this comment once, and she said, the most important work that we could ever do on this earth is learning to love ourselves. And I think it's so true, because when we learn to really love ourselves, then we're able to feel our worth. When things come, we're not questioning, are we lovable? Do we matter? Am I invisible? Do I care? But we are able to have that deep love, and we understand our value that's going to give us the ability to go forward.
Yeah. And to be clear, that's our true, like the light in us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shadow version that's a reflection of the wound. That's the part of us we need to not be convinced is us. That's the part of us that when the healing takes place, we're able to differentiate between sort of a selfish, angry version of ourselves and this true essence of who we are, which is always bright. And they've actually done research on it and shown that when we're able to sort of take that third person perspective, they call it the observing self in Buddhism. There's almost this sense, there's this wisdom, non-judgmental, compassionate, awareness of what the best course of action is to take. It makes decisions very clear. It's very forgiving, and yet it's very firm in its boundaries, so it's just like this best version of us. And you could say, from our point of view, let's just say that's our spirit self. That's the part of us that's that piece of God, that divine being, child of God, that who we really were the whole time, and if you think about that, that's sort of like the ruby slippers and there's no place like home. It was always there. There was always that inside of us, but we forget it. We bury it. Or it gets buried, by the hard things in this life. Life is hard for all of us in some way. So,
but I think also too, when you learn to really love yourself, the shadow self, you also learn to love that, not love oh, it's so great, but a love of acceptance, surrender, being able to look at it and see the this is what I got to learn. This is the experience that it gave me.
I'll actually have clients envision their true self putting their arm around their shadow self and kind of loving him or her.
Yeah.
Okay, that's saying, what I was.
I get it. I know why you're hurting, and I can understand why you're angry, and I'm here for you now.
Yep.
And it's amazing, the healing, and that's between them and them.
Yep, exactly.
But what does that like you said, Sunshine, that opens them up then to let go of some of that garbage so that they can be there with another person. But without that, they can't. Go ahead.
I keep cutting you off. I'm so sorry.
No. Go. It's going to be good.
That is exactly, when you said that, I was like, that's exactly what I did. That was what the Lord kind of instructed me to do, was to kind of stop where I was at and look back at my past, my childhood, the person I was then, even the woman I was in my marriage, and almost have compassion on that person, even though it wasn't my current me, it was my past me. And to almost embrace them and be like, I'm so sorry you had to endure what you've done, what you've went through. You didn't deserve this. You didn't deserve to have these labels or this misunderstanding. You weren't, to blame for any of this stuff that's happened to you. And I love you. And I wish I could just embrace you and go back and tell you in your past that none of it's true. And to just hold on. So when you said that, that's exactly kind of what I had to do. It was the weirdest thing, but it was therapeutic. It was really good.
Well, and like Sunshine said, then that opens you up to be really authentic and vulnerable with other people.
Yeah.
Because now you know where you're really coming from.
Yeah.
And you don't have that, that darkness in between.
I do that exercise with clients a lot too, that I'll take, a time of their life or a version of themselves that they're struggling with. And I have them write a letter to themselves.
Mhm.
And it's so healing, because like you said, it's, hey, you were doing the very best that you could. You were hurt. You just felt so alone, and that healing that takes place. And now, so that's actually something that I encourage a lot of people to do, is to take that version of yourself that you feel like is still so stuck and hurting, and take some time with yourself and write a letter to him or her. And
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys ever share that quote by Carl Jung to your patients about loving yourself and the enemy within?
Yeah.
You know which one I'm talking about,
I know
right?
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think every
Or
psychologist,
at least the
probably,
idea of it. I don't know if I
Yeah.
don't always quote Carl Jung, but definitely it's a great concept.
Yeah, I just looked it up here because I love the quote. I always think about it like kind of offhand, and I wish I had it in. Let me just read it real quick for those in the audience. He says that I feed the beggar, that I forgive an insult, that I love my enemy in the name of Christ. All these are undoubtedly great virtues. What I do unto the least of my brethren, that I do unto Christ. But what if I should discover that the least among them all, the poorest of all beggars, the most impudent of all offenders, yea, the very fiend himself, that these are within me, and that I myself stand in need of all the alms of my own kindness, that I myself am the enemy who must be loved. What then? So it's kind of like saying, hey, look, it's great that we do all these things for other people, but tearing ourselves apart, I mean, that's really where we need to do that work. Finding that peace within ourselves, finding the love for ourselves. That can be very difficult. I oftentimes would much rather go down and give one of the homeless people a blanket or something else rather than like do something kind or think kindly of myself. So it just seems easier to do kind things to others than to myself.
Yeah.
So.
And something I tell my clients is, you're worth the effort. You're worth loving yourself. You're worth the time that it takes. You're worth spending 10 minutes and, whatever, like, you're worth that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's because it's so true. Like most people probably don't even believe that, but it's a fact.
Yeah.
So.
Like, you're worth the journey. You're worth the trial. Like, you're worth the storm that you're battling. Like, it's because you're worth it.
Yeah. I love that.
It reminds me of a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist, teacher. And he said something to the effect that if someone causes you suffering, he doesn't need punishment, he needs help, because in the end he is lost, and it's almost like I see that inside of ourselves too, that you could say, well, my decisions have led to suffering, or I've hurt people I care about, or, and at that point you feel like you want to punish yourself. But in reality, that's just a sign that you need help. And even the recognition of it is a sign that you're ready for the help.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so take advantage of that opportunity and say, and what's the help? The help is, learn from those experiences. And once you do that, you don't have to worry about repeating history, but if you don't learn from them, you'll hurt again, and most of all yourself. So,
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like too, once you've got to that point where you're feeling good, that communication, especially with the opposite sex that people so desperately want in these situations, almost starts to come natural.
Exactly.
Like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, let's talk, because life is good. So
Exactly.
I also think at that point, and you probably noticed this, Sunshine, because you had a very quick romance and it's turned out really well. Whether it takes 4 weeks or 4 months or 4 years, well, I would hope it doesn't take 4 years, but but I think there's almost a surrender in that too, in that there just reaches this point where we're not trying to communicate anymore. It's just natural. It just flows. I am just really at peace in your presence. You have become like a really powerful force for good in my life. And at that point, it's almost like nothing needs to be said, in a way. Like, whether there's words or not doesn't even matter. And is that kind of what you experienced, even though it was quick?
Like when we first met, or
No,
your
well,
month.
by the time you know, I mean, we may need to develop that into a relationship too. The concern I have about that is, what if you find out, and I think this is why Everett often talks about taking your time, is because in a way it's almost a crapshoot if I do it too quickly.
sure.
And I have seen people where they marry within a few weeks or a couple months, and it works out. And then you say to yourself, oh, you know, it's almost like Russian roulette and the bullet wasn't in that chamber. You know what I mean? And like, so you landed up with a really amazing person. But, you know, I think I'd like it to be a little bit more conscious than that, you know, and
So
at that,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, so like I waited 3 years before I even got married. So it wasn't like, hey, you know, like rebound.
Right.
And, you know, the way that we got married is so like, it's not something that I would typically do. Like people who know me, like that's not a typical move that I would do. Like it was a total God thing. Like he was in the details, but
Right.
even through my whole journey, if even where I am at right now, I think learning to deeply communicate and being really vulnerable with each other is the key. You know, because I think people think like, oh, well, when there's love, that's all you need to have and you're okay and things just smooth and things just flow. But both of you get triggered and both of you have trials and both of you go through your storms. And so I think it's the communication that's going to bind you together. Right.
Well, and I have a theory about that, like, because in English, we only have one word for love. And I would agree that love, the universal love we talk about, that's never going to be enough. If it's the pure love of Christ, I really do believe that's enough. Mm-hmm. But to get there, you really have to have that internal work done. Mm-hmm. To me, your story is a testimony to me that there's something more important than time dating. And that is, there's time healing. Mm-hmm. And if I can get to that level and I can find another human being that's done the same, I really can envision knowing within a few weeks. And then why would we delay at that point? But I think the problem is when people rush in, is they're rushing in having not done that healing, having not done that work. Exactly. And then it's a crapshoot where you're going to luck out if you get with somebody that's healthy enough to pull it off. Basically. Exactly.
It kind of is what Everett was saying as far as jumping into that and doing all of that. And I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's almost like playing Russian roulette, but instead of one chamber having a bullet, 5 of them do and 1 is empty, you know?
Yeah.
It's way more dangerous, more tricky, you know? Well, I mean, let's be honest. If you're jumping in on a marriage like that and you don't know the other person, how do you know that they're healed? How can you be certain?
On the research, on the statistics, it's more like four rounds are in the gun, not 5.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was way off then. Forget that entire analogy.
You have 2 chances of surviving. So
that's right. We're like 33% chance of survival. So it's all good. We got it. Anyway, we're going to bring on Syra. She has a question for us.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Yes. She's coming.
Keep bracing yourself, John.
There she is.
Here she comes.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, Mr. Therapist. I got a question for Mr. Therapist. And Sunshine, I'm sorry, I don't know what your title is. Are you counselor, therapist, coach?
The best way I can describe myself is a holistic practitioner.
Okay, I'll call you practitioner. Okay, so for the therapists and the practitioners here, this is going to be a little bit different from the line of thought that we're going through. We are raised in the gospel with certain ideas that we are to follow certain paths. Generally, you know, there's different ways of getting there and stuff like that, but we're taught a certain way. Have you guys ever come across somebody when you're trying to help guide them along and they tell you something like, and not in negativity or anything like that, just genuinely say, I don't feel like that's the way that I'm supposed to go. I don't feel like that's where God is taking me. Because like this is something I've been thinking about for a long time about, I've been divorced for 14 years, and I've done it on my own this whole time. And I dated a lot because I figured that my chances wouldn't go up without my numbers going up, right? And getting out there. And so I have. And yet, even when I was right or thought that I was right, I was so sure I was still wrong. And so I'm genuinely wondering if I'm on a path, the Lord has me on a path where he generally does not want me to look for that right now. Like I'm not supposed to find that right now. Have you ever had anybody come up to you and say, okay, this is what I feel like the Lord's telling me. It's out of the norm, off the path. And what do you guys tell them? The heavy one.
Well,
you're right to brace yourself.
I'll answer it like with a quick answer and then turn it over to Sunshine. But I think what Sunshine was talking about is the answer, whether you're looking for or not, to be honest. Like, so I think it's great to date. I think it's fine if you don't date. But I think if we, because I'm not going to say you, I'm talking about me too. If we can connect to that core version of ourselves, I really feel like the story will be told in just the right way for us. Whatever that may be. I think that we make mistakes on two ends of the spectrum. And one is that we shut ourselves off from any kind of exploration of relationships. We give up, essentially.
I face the shutting off too. And I want to know, it's not that I want to close myself off to anything, because I want to stay open to whatever path the Lord has me on. But I also kind of don't want to, I feel like I need to let go of certain parts of it. And I don't know how to let go.
Yeah. And so I think the trying too hard and the giving up are the two extremes. And I think each of us just needs to find our way down the middle somewhere, that works for us. But I think that flows from, it is finished, like I am at peace, and I think dating is better when you're at peace, and living on your own is better when you're at peace. And that's what I've found for myself. And for some people that might take a year to heal. For some, it might take 14 years. I don't know that you needed 14 years to heal, but that's just your story. But I feel
like I've been on a path of education is what I feel like.
Absolutely.
What that education's for, I'm not really sure yet.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's been, it's definitely, I can see it culminating in surrender of some kind. I don't know that I'm even fully there yet, as far as all the things that, some of them are more conscious than others. I think all the conscious ones I feel totally great about. But I don't know if there's things left in me that need to heal, but I'm willing to let that story unfold, so I'll turn it over to Sunshine.
When you were talking, there's two questions that popped in my head that I wonder, I don't know if you've maybe considered praying about or asking, but maybe ask the Lord, what is your plan for me? What is it that you want me to do? Like, what is your plan? What is the path that you want me to be on? And two, you said you feel like you're on a path of learning and education. I would ask, what is it that you're wanting me to learn? What are the lessons that you're wanting me to learn? Or maybe what are the habits that you're wanting me to unlearn? What are the things that maybe I've been doing to protect myself or run away from? What are the things that you're wanting me to unlearn so that I can become the truest version of myself? And so maybe a little bit of digging and trying to find that direction might help you find yourself on that path, because I think when you are on the path that the Lord wants you to be on, you feel peace. When I wasn't quite ready to date, I was okay by not dating. Like, I just felt peace with where I was at. And when I felt ready and I felt like the Lord was guiding me, it didn't feel like, oh, I got to hurry up and I'm just ready to go. But it was more of feeling nudged or feeling like I was ready for it. And so I think it makes life a lot easier when you feel like you are on the path that the Lord wants you to be on.
So
I like it.
there's a couple of things that I've been actually, it's interesting you say that because I've been praying this for the last at least 3 years. And the last 3 years is the feeling that I've had that I'm on this path of education. And I've asked so many times, for clarification, enlightenment, anything, and the number one answer I constantly get is be patient and have faith. And I'm like, I'm trying so hard. And so the trick for me is trying to find that peace before you find the answers, before you realize it. You know what I mean? So I guess that's where I'm going. Do I let go of this? Do I I don't know. I'm sorry, this is a complicated question. And I really
I
think
don't
that
think
your
it
answers
is.
actually is comforting to know that you're telling people this, because that, from what I've learned so far, those are the right answers to give people, when they say, okay, my life, it doesn't feel like the normal path.
The thing that I was thinking about too when you were talking is you were saying, oh, it's not typical, or it doesn't feel normal. The thing that came to me was I look at, and I'm using scripture because I love using scripture because I feel like I can compare and relate to other people. But I look at Nephi, and the way that he and his family was directed to do everything was so unconventional. And it wasn't typical at all. The way that they got the plates. I mean, he essentially told Nephi, break the commandments, go kill somebody in order to get the plates. There was so much that was so unconventional. And so when it comes to, and there's so many things in my life, like when I was sharing, there were so many things that just didn't seem right to a lot of people when the Lord was preparing me for my husband and I to, separate for him through the veil. Things were so unconventional. And what I've learned is in my life, that's one of the ways that I know that the Lord is showing up, is because it doesn't make sense to men, because it is so unconventional. And that's, I think, your answer that you're getting, I think, is something that a lot of us are getting, especially today, is be patient. Trust me, fear not, peace, be still. And I think it's also okay to ask the deeper questions. How do you feel about me? What is it that you want me to do? While I'm being patient, what is it that you want me to put my focus on? How do you want me to move forward? What does that look like? And I think it's okay to ask deeper questions, or to say, hey, I'd like to have more details on that because I don't know what that means.
Those are good questions, because you're not necessarily not exercising your faith or questioning God's reasons, but you're asking for things that he can tell you.
Exactly.
How do you feel about me? That kind of stuff. And that helps to feel that peace, I think, beforehand. And it's interesting that you say that, things are unconventional. I think we do get caught up in this idea that that our lives are supposed to follow a certain path. It's like it's fitting into a mold or whatever. It's a very much our culture, I guess, not our church, but the culture.
Right.
And there's a book that comes to my mind that I guess is something that is kind of part of my own answer to my own question. I came across a book by Kristen Oakes. She is Dallin Oakes' second wife. She met and married him in her 50s. And she wrote this book, A Single Voice. And I highly recommend anybody listen or read this book, because it's incredible. It really changed my perspective a lot. But the subtitle is the part that really shows the purpose of her book. And because she questions herself her whole life too. She talks all about it. And it says, the unexpected life is no less a life. So I think it's really important for us to remember that, yeah, my path is not taking a quote unquote conventional, path. And it's not supposed to. I think the church is full, and probably on purpose, of people who are taking unconventional paths, because they're meant to carry and inspire and motivate and help guide other people that are taking unconventional paths, So I don't know, maybe that's it.
I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. Would it be okay? I mean, I know your story better than some, Syra. Would it be okay if I shared just the impression that I just had? I mean, I feel like the message is for me as much as anyone, and maybe it will benefit someone else. But, for those of you who don't know, Syra's on a healing journey, and I know that has been a huge challenge. and
Huge.
and weighed you down in many ways, on top of all the other things you've had to deal with in your life. So I feel a deep sense of admiration for what you've been through and how you've handled it with a lot of grace. I just thought of, what if the lesson, and again, this is for me too, because I don't know that I feel whole and complete sometimes. But what if the lesson is to recognize how incredibly lovable you are at a time when you haven't completely healed, when you don't feel whole? But could it be that you are still worthy, lovable enough, all of those things? And if you could learn that, wouldn't that lesson be incredible? And then to me,
What's funny is that I feel all of that and inside, and I was joking about this in the chat, but I feel like I hate putting this term on it, but the more beautiful that I feel on the inside, the more broken down my body gets. And it's really hard because I recognize I really like myself, and I like the fact that I can look in the mirror or look at myself and say, I really like who I am. But as my body breaks down, like you said, with all the effects of going through cancer, and it's still happening, and I'm watching it every time I look in the mirror, I don't see the person that I feel like. And it's hard for me because I know that it's hard for other people to see that.
And I don't either. When I look in the mirror, I don't know that, where I'm at, in my own journey, feels right. I would just say, and this, what I would say to myself is, when I look in the mirror, and no matter who's looking back, or, what his face looks like, or how much he weighs, or, any of that stuff that we get worried about, when I feel like, hey, John, it's good to see you again, almost like, I'm okay, like I am totally at peace with who I am right now. Maybe that's a time in my life where it's finished. You know what I mean? I don't know if it'll even happen in this life for me. I would hope that it would happen for you too, but I would think, that day will come, for all of us at some point. I think once it does, then we're at peace no matter what happens in relationship to dating or relationships or things like that. But it's a game changer, I think that whatever is supposed to happen after that is just going to be amazing, and I think that's when our path basically reveals itself, is when and I don't know if that is the lesson that you're meant to learn. I know that when you learn whatever lesson that all of these trials are meant to teach all of us, I just feel like that's when it's okay, no matter what happens. But that's when what exactly needs to happen happens, when it doesn't have to happen anymore. And
Be patient and have faith.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that part of the message you've gotten is dead on, have patience and have faith. And I would add to that, just see how incredible you are while you're waiting to be whole, and don't wait until you're completely whole to feel that,
Exactly. One of the thoughts that I had too is, what if you're being taught that you're enough exactly as you are right now? Like in the state that you're at.
That's a simple way of saying it. Yeah.
What if you're learning that you are enough exactly as you are right now? Like, you are beautiful at where you're at right now on your journey. You are enough. You are lovable. Like, you are like where you're at. Because I think so much we feel like we have to, when I get to this point, then things will be better. If I can just do this, if I can get my hair to grow back, if I can whatever, then. But what if the message and the lesson is right now? Like, you're whole right now. Like, you can be whole right now. You can find peace right now. Like, you can experience this right now exactly as you are. You don't have to earn it or fight for it or look for it or prove for it, wait for it. Like, you can experience it right now in the state that you're in.
Mm-hmm. And I mean,
like
to believe
saying amen to that.
Yeah, and believe in great men who will love you just how you are too. I think there's almost this fear that, I'm somehow not, I don't know if I would want to be married because I don't know if they would accept me. What if you just throw that out the window and you just approach it like, I'm going to just live my life like that's not going to be an issue for whoever he is. And I think that's kind of when he shows up, when
It's such a transition for me because, like, I know this is going to sound terrible, but like most of my life, I've not really had much of an issue with getting attention, mostly not because my looks. I'm like average or slightly above average looking, but I'm a lot of fun and I know how to make people feel good. So that's where I've gotten. And so the last 3 years, though, or I should say the last 2 years since I was diagnosed with cancer, it's just kind of like, I mean, that's what cancer does, is it tries to strip you of everything that makes you feel like you. And so now I'm getting rejected and I see it in people's faces, you know, and it makes me not want to stop trying because I'm like, you don't see me the way that I see me now, you know, and so I'll figure it out. I know I will because I'm too stubborn not to. But it's I know this is not
Tyra,
something that's
I think this
cancer's exclusive to me, but not the struggle, you know.
I think that rejection, we got to be careful with rejection because we want to oversimplify. We want to say, oh, they must have rejected me because of how I look because of the cancer, or, you know, when in reality, what if the thing that's hard for them to embrace is that I haven't accepted how I look with the cancer? Does that make sense? In other words, like,
I've actually had people tell me, I mean, because I ask and talk to people, you know.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, if that's their attitude, I would just say that's an excellent weeding out process.
I was going to say that's not the right person. So
I love the quote.
Care.
I love the quote that we've had on here many times before, that to the wrong person, you'll never have any worth, but to the right person, you'll mean everything. And you are going through these people and you're finding somebody who rejects you. They're the wrong person. It doesn't matter where you're at. When the time is right and it's the right person, they're going to just you're going to mean everything to them. It will all come together. So don't take the rejection as some sort of notice about you, of how you look, or like your worthiness or any of that. Just take a look at it and say, that was not the right person for me. Because when it is the right person,
it's not always it's not always about the the guy's a jerk or anything like it, because most of the men that I've dated or that I've been interested in are incredible people, you
doesn't
know,
mean they're bad people.
Right. I
Right.
can't blame them in some situations because there is a plethora of righteous, wonderful women out there. And if you take two righteous women and one's got major health issues and missing body parts or whatever, you know, and the other woman doesn't, he's going to go after the other woman. And if I was in his place, I probably would too. So like, you know, and this is all stuff I'm just coming to terms with. I'm very sorry about making this about me. I wanted to just ask a simple
hey,
question.
Sarah,
but
I think you'd be shocked about how this is about all of us right now.
Yep.
You know, the more you think it's about
what
just
I'm hoping to make it.
that's the more it's about all of us. So
yeah,
you know,
Yeah,
I think I made
want
a
it to
comment
be
recently because I'm
something that
about
helps all
40
of us.
pounds a bigger boy than I want to be right now, and I could get all worked up about that and just say I'm not going to date until I get back in shape. But you know, at some point, I just said to myself, you know what? In a way, I want, you know, part of our healing happens alone, and part of it happens in relation to other people. And you know, I don't want someone who just says, you know, oh, John, you just go be ahead and be as fat as you want to be, and I'll love you anyway. I want them to know I'm working on, you know, that I value my health.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
I that's just it, is I'm not complacent like this. I am going to improve, but you know,
this isn't a character issue with you. This is a health issue. This is something where you didn't have a choice in the matter. And so, but I want them to look on my heart and my mind and really fall in love with that. But it may be that the relationship itself has a healing effect and one of the, and I you know, I made a comment where I just said, you know, I would love it. You know, if someone really believed in me, even though I'm not where I want to be in every aspect of my life, whether it's financially or physically, spiritually, whatever. And then, you know, part of the reward is as that healing continues is, you know, to be kind of a hottie eventually, but not necessarily physically, but just to become better, having been loved well. and
I think that's why I fell so hard for my ex-boyfriend. And we were going to get married, but I fell so hard for him because he was loving me in the middle of, he was there for the first 6 months of my cancer journey. He saw me fall apart, and he was there and everything. He kind of disappeared on me after 6 months because he was emotionally struggling to carry everything that he felt like he had to carry the whole world on his shoulders. But the fact that that's why I felt so hard, because I want somebody to grow with me.
Right.
What's that?
So that was a test for you and him. And, I think some people we date are just meant to be there to help us through a certain part of our journey, and, or to remind us what it's like to be loved for who we are, but it doesn't mean necessarily they're meant to stay. Or they're to remind us how not to be treated too. So,
yeah, and there's one more thing on this, and then we need to move along because we're getting a little short on time, but it may be more than just sort of this trial for you. Maybe there is a growth component to this as well. The Heavenly Father is like, a little bit of time in this mode of waiting will stretch you and grow you in ways that he sees that is going to be beneficial for you. Mm-hmm. And I love that quote. I'm going to paraphrase it by Orson Hyde, excuse me, where he talks about the struggles and the trials that we go through in life, cancer and those sort of things, are trials that most likely we agreed to before we came to this life. And we signed off on them with our own hands, saying, yes, I will go through that. And when we're here,
was that?
I want to
know.
I know. What the crap was I even agreeing to?
I know. I think they slipped a paper in for me. I wasn't paying attention. I signed it, and they're like, they did a fast one. Like,
I claim temporary insanity or something because
right.
Well,
but the idea is
we beg to be here for the second coming too, and then you're kind of like, I don't know, if it's looking a little hairy right now, but
right,
here we go.
But there is purpose behind what you're going through, Syra, and we may not know what that is. More than likely, at some point, years and eons ago, you signed off and said, "Okay, let's do this. These are going to be my struggles. These are going to be my pains." But when that time comes,
I was drunk.
Drunk in the pre-existence, right?
Well, we didn't have bodies then. I don't think we fully
It was a spiritual drunk.
Right.
I 100% know when that time comes, it will all come together and you will look back and say it was worth it. Yeah. And the struggles and the pain and the growth and all of that will put you in a spot that is going to be amazing. Right now it's tough, but it will be worth it if you.
Well, and that's the thing, Syra, totally I don't blame you for being heartbroken now, though. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's tough in the middle of it, even when you understand the end of it.
No doubt. But I admire you have a beautiful spirit, and like, you're right about, we could rename you Sunshine, and that would be appropriate, and
I think she owns that name.
Both fit that name very well.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Syra, so much. I appreciate that. Okay, we are kind of running over here, and I think Sunshine she's got to get up early for her yoga here, so her eyes are looking a little heavy.